advice do you have to homeowners?
Practicing that preparedness. Starting the conversation now is always going to be a benefit to any association out there.
And welcome to Recovery Report Live. I'm Dan Odess, president of GlobalPro, where we manage your risk to recovery. And if you've been tuning in, you know this is the place to get insurance news and information as a business owner or community association. Information you can actually use. So thanks for tuning in today. We got a great show ahead of us. We got an awesome guest out of New York. He's downtown in Manhattan. Yes, he's in an office building, and he's going to provide us great insight on important topics impacting that area, particularly as it relates to construction. But before we get there, for our audience that is listening in, that is located in the Florida area, for all those that may have relocated from New York down here, want to make sure that you're aware of the recent legislative changes. Big time, right? There's a lot to go over. So rather than boring you with a long segment about each and every nuance of what has happened and all the anti-consumer stuff that the legislating body has passed and somehow ran a campaign on saving you money, despite the fact that it's going to save you no money. Even in fact, most of the legislators who voted for this will even tell you it's not going to save you any money. What it really does is actually prejudice your rights as a policyholder more than really anything else. It protects you from contractors. Beyond that, we're not so sure what it actually accomplished. There is some reporting obligations from insurers, but let's kind of talk about some of the anti-consumer stuff. First off, notice of reporting of a claim. It's been cut to 2 years. Why that's important is because there's actually cases out there. Again, I'm not an attorney, but I'm gonna say it as I am as a layperson or an experienced person in insurance would interpret or understand these things, is that I have a loss, and I only have 2 years to report those issues. Now, we're going to break all this down in a memo and talk about the nuances and how it may impact you and what your notice requirements are. But the bottom line is, I have 2 years. I mean, there's cases I'm aware of that talk about how some of these issues from a hurricane may not appear within the first 3 years. So we've taken a year away, and you got to do better and sooner as far as giving notice of these issues. Now, notice is not only for the actual for making a claim, but also your intent to sue an insurance company. Now, where I see this falling short of really protecting anyone but the insurance companies and allowing them to fortify a defense, which is just only going to take more time and more expense on behalf of the insured, is that you have to actually tell them that you're going to sue them even though they violated their contract. You have to sort of somehow give them some sort of opportunity to correct their mistakes. But why? I mean, the contract was written by them. It really doesn't really add up in any way in protecting you as a consumer. But it seems like it's protecting the insurance company. But there are some good things in here to take care of these vicious and deceitful contractors that have been attacking policyholders when they're at their worst with regards to the assignment of benefits. And I'm being a little bit sarcastic. There's some, exaggeration obviously included in there, but that's really what it's been played up, right? That's what's costing us policyholders money in our premium, or allegedly that's what's leading to it. Let's not talk about the structure of the insurance companies and how they have these subsidiaries and managing companies, which then keep increasing the fees, and then the retail brokers have to increase the cost of the premium and the insurance and get into all that. But let's talk about the contractors and this litigation, the uptick of these things, and why insurance companies now have the opportunity to really question a lot about what contractors are doing and how they're doing it. And again, I'm all for protecting the consumer, but let's make sure it's protecting the consumer and not obligating the consumer to do more in order to protect itself from the contractor. If you follow that train of thought, that's kind of what I see happening in a lot of this legislation, not only in this session, but in prior sessions. So a lot to tear apart, a lot to take apart. And I really want to emphasize this. We will be issuing our own understanding that's based on our counsel's review of these issues. We've been collecting the opinions of both the insurance company side as well as trade organizations such as FAPIA, Florida Association of Insurance and Public Adjusters, to really get into these issues and break them down for you. Make sure you understand them. What does it mean to you as a policyholder, and how can GlobalPro as insurance experts help you in dealing with these situations? Because it is a lot to unpack. I mean, just from Florida Association of Public Insurance does, I have it up here on my screen here in the studio. I mean, it is, the one is a 5-page memo and the other one's an 8-page memo with lots of underlines and things crossed out and things highlighted in yellow, boldface, italics, there's red marks, there's a lot on here. And I think being your advocate and working for you as a policyholder, we want to make sure that you have the information you need in order to obtain the recovery you're entitled to, but also make sure that you get the insurance you need. And that's what's really important here, because you got to understand that some of this stuff is going to get included in policy, some of it may not. So it may not all be that clear to you when you get your next renewal. So be cognizant of that, and understand there's going to be all kinds of limitations with regards to hurricane claims, whether it's the way in which you recover, to disclosure on the part of insurance companies when their adjusters come out, requiring them to provide their licensing information. I know of one claim that we handled after Hurricane Irma, where they kept reassigning the claim to adjusters out of Canada, and none of them had actually a current license. It became a real big issue in litigation, because subpoenaing those individuals is very difficult here in the United States for someone that resides in Canada. Very costly, very difficult. Again, a lot of different hurdles. So again, there are some good things in here. There's a silver lining to this. And I think a lot of the stuff regarding contractors is good. Don't get me wrong. But you got to understand, they are taking some of the obligation, putting it on you as a policyholder, and obligating you to protect yourself from them. So it's really important that you understand these things. It's important that you get the information you need. Keep tuning in here. We want to make sure that you have that information for you. Speaking of which, and I made a comment earlier, I'm very excited about our guests, really excited to have them on. Someone that has a tremendous amount of experience in dealing with insurance. In fact, he's a son of a former public adjuster, so who better to have on than someone that actually can relate and grew up in the industry, understanding and seeing his father firsthand do these things, and went on to get a law degree, and now continues to advocate for policyholders. He does reside in New York. I'm going to bring on our guest, Mr. Johnathan Lerner. He's in Manhattan, New York there. You can see a beautiful skyline. Look at those blue, sunny skies. Very excited. A little clouds, but we were talking earlier before you came on, Johnathan, about how that skyline behind you has changed. But let's talk bigger picture. How has New York changed in the last year? What do you and talk to us a little about your firm and the changes you guys have made and what you guys do for your clients.
Sure, Dan. I mean, we are a bilateral firm. We specialize in first and third party property damage, and my partner Charles Arnold, who's the A in law, he specializes in serious personal injury cases. And you're right. Growing up as the son of a public adjuster, I have basically lived this industry even from my teenage years up through now. So I started as a associate at a downtown firm that specialized in policyholder work, and then we started this firm back in 2000. So over 20 years of business now and going strong.
Yeah, good for you, man. And I got to applaud you for the acronym. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen that ever happen with a law firm. And I have a lot of lawyer friends around me, and I don't think they've ever been able to accomplish that. So doing it for 20 years, and you figured out how to use your names to create an acronym that says law. That's fantastic. We talk a lot about business strategy. That's a heck of a strategy. So compliments to you. So I want to dive into an issue that we've talked a lot about. Really important to associations, whether homeowner associations, co-ops, condo associations, as well as business owners, especially considering the growth that we're experiencing here in the United States and many of the urban core areas. While the cycle obviously in New York has taken a hit, as most of us will agree, because of the pandemic, there is always a desire and a pull to Manhattan, and there always seems to be growth opportunities. And I know there's still projects going on, and having worked for a contractor out of New York, I've seen it firsthand. I've seen, how they fit buildings in between buildings that are literally touching each other. And I want to get into these issues because we're dealing with so much of this right now, and I believe that the cycle will come back to New York, and I think that we're already seeing some of the growth opportunities. The rental rates go up. It's just a matter of time. Look, it's like New York, Manhattan's like a drug. It's like, once you had a little taste of it, you want to keep going back. So I want to focus in on first contractors doing work on a insured's property causing damage, and talk particularly about New York. As a licensed attorney in New York, I want to hear from you what you see in your practice. And can an insured recover for construction damages from their own insurance, meaning first-party insurance claim in New York?
So Dan, the first thing I'm going to say is anybody that bets against this city making a full and complete comeback is making a big mistake. I mean, it may take a little time to get back to the way things were before March of 2020, but we're going to get there. And you know,
I second that.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about damage caused by a contractor that you've retained to do work on your own property is the policy exclusion for faulty or defective workmanship. And you know, that is something that is a potential issue to a claim submitted by a homeowner or a commercial property owner, because if I bring in a plumber to upgrade my plumbing system at my building, and in the course of doing work, he creates a situation where there's property damage, that workmanship exclusion is likely going to have some effect to limit maybe part or all of the claim. Now, you know, we talk about faulty workmanship in the context of, let's say he's not tightening his lug nuts enough, or he's not soldering correctly at an elbow, and now all of a sudden we've got an ensuing loss where, you know, because the pipes are charged with water, we've got water damage throughout the building. General rule in New York and in most states, because the way the policy language reads is you wouldn't have coverage for the actual defective work that was done on the pipe or the elbow itself, but the ensuing water damages would be covered. So when you talk about a contractor that causes damage within a building that is owned by a policyholder, you need to see what the cause of the loss is. You need to see whether or not the damages flow from an ensuing cause of loss, which in New York is pretty clear is a separate and distinct event from the actual loss itself, or the negligence itself that gives rise to the loss. And then you need to see what the damages are. And you know, as an advocate of policyholders, I mean, obviously we always try to find the coverage, but if there's not coverage under the first party policy, then there's the potential coverage against the contractor under their third party liability coverage that they have, you know, save of course for things like your work or your workmanship. I mean, one of the issues that we run into a lot is you have a person who spends, you know, several $100,000 or, you know, in some instances millions of dollars on a renovation, and you know, within 6 months or a year after the renovation, things start to fall apart. Well, if those things are falling apart because it was the quality of the workmanship, most liability policies don't insure against that. So there are some instances where you do have a contractor working on your property where you may be self-insuring that risk, unfortunately. But you know, as somebody who advocates for trying to recover monies, you know, we will dig deep into the first party and potentially the third party coverage to try to help that policyholder make a recovery.
And we've seen you dig deep. I know that we've joined forces and worked closely together where we had actually a tenant landlord issue where the landlord wasn't really maintaining an issue, and it caused substantial damage to a business. And you were very successful in getting a recovery there. So we know you will dig deep. In fact, we introduced that individual to several other attorneys. And they ended up with you and got a positive result. So there's your testimonial. So definitely worth contacting them with regards to those issues. But what is the construction litigation landscape like in New York? I preface this with, we've talked about Florida a lot on this show. We've talked about the 558 Florida statute, which is a construction defect. It's intended to resolve it, but what we've seen is this trend towards it really just delaying litigation and costing more money, despite it actually saying it's supposed to save money. What's it like in New York?
Well, again, it kind of varies between whether it's the direct claim against your contractor or against a contractor who may be working at some adjacent property that results in damage to your property. And I would say, generally speaking, one of the issues that you run into a lot in New York is that even though contractors have to be licensed and insured, sometimes, and I'm sure you see this down in Florida, you get a contractor who may not have the right insurance or who may not have any assets, and you end up spinning your wheels in litigation against them if they do cause damage to you. Interestingly enough, I mean, there's some insurance companies that write in New York, and I've seen it before, where you have a roofing contractor that has a policy that excludes any and all work relating to roofing. So it's an issue. It's an issue. But again, if you can establish that there was some negligence in the course of the construction that has resulted in damage from an ensuing type loss, if you have guys that are torching down a rubber membrane roof and as a result of not having a proper fire watch or not properly protecting against a smoldering type of fire situation within the roof rafters and the building goes up in flames, that's a pretty straightforward negligence claim against that contractor. Where we've seen a real change, and I know we wanted to talk about the adjacent construction world within that world itself, because New York back in 2009 had decided the issue of whether or not the earth movement exclusion would apply to a claim involving adjacent construction where there's been excavation that has moved the earth as opposed to an earthquake or a mudslide or a landslide. And the New York Court of Appeals, which is the highest court in New York, in a case called Pioneer Towers versus State Farm, ruled that only naturally occurring earth movement is what was intended by the earth movement exclusion, and upheld any claims where the earth movement was caused by excavation. But every time the policyholder bar does good work in getting coverage, the carriers have had the reactive response of changing their policy language. So nowadays, we have policy language that reads earth movement, landslide, mudslide, earthquake, whether naturally occurring or man-made. And unfortunately, in the case that I lost back in, I think it was 2013 or so, the Court of Appeals upheld that excavation would constitute man-made earth movement. So there, and I'm sure that you'd say this in terms of the policyholders that you represent. The first thing you always have to do is look at the policy, and you have to see what the language is, because even to this day, there are some insurance companies, and I'm not going to name them because I don't want them to wise up to this fact, that have not changed the language of their policies. So if we're brought in on a claim of that nature, the first thing we do is look at the policy. If there's no man-made exclusion, we tell the public adjuster or the broker or the insured to pursue it directly against their carrier. And worst case scenario, there's a building owner and a contractor and an excavation contractor next door that is likely going to have some liability. And in New York, it could actually be strict liability. So.
Well, there's no doubt I had the right guy on today to talk about these issues. And I mean, that was incredible information. And I can't wait to have this in our archives to be able to point to provide our clients with this much needed information. Some tips. Let's narrow it down. What are some tips in dealing with documenting and recovering from these types of losses, whether they're on site or nearby? What kind of tips would you give for a building owner that's either dealing with a construction project going up nearby or a contractor coming on site and doing work?
Yeah, I mean, listen, preserving the scene prior to the work commencing is always one of the most important steps, right? So nowadays in the eras of drones and high level photography, even from iPhones, I mean, pre-con surveys are really important, especially if there's adjacent construction work going on. In New York, an adjacent landowner that's going to be doing a project that might in any way impact a neighboring property has to give notice of the fact that they're going to be doing the project. They have a right to come on your property and do a pre-con survey. So my advice to a property owner, if they called me up and said, hey, I just got this letter that this developer is going to be building this massive tower next door to my 6-story walk-up building, would be, let's get photographs, let's get an engineer out there, let's get some crack monitors or some vibration monitoring in place, because I can guarantee you, in the context of adjacent construction in New York City, the developer next door has one concern, which is putting his building up and getting his rental income. And you, as the neighboring property owner to him, are collateral damage that will be dealt with presumably by his insurance carrier. So you have to take these affirmative steps to try to protect yourself and preserve the evidence before they get in there and tell you that your building was run down, had wear and tear, was in bad condition before.
All right, so Jonathan, how can our audience get in contact with your firm or you personally?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's easy. We have a website that we're in the process of fixing up at the moment. It's www.lawpartnersllp.com. You can call our main number, which is 212-686-4655, or I'm always available through email, jlerner@lawpartnersllp.com.
Well, Jonathan, it's been an awesome pleasure and an absolute pleasure to have you on. Fantastic information. Again, this stuff will be available for all of our viewing audience and our clients to see online, to use as a resource. A lot of information in there. Kind of like in the earlier segment, I was talking about the legislation, a lot to unpack. It's just really just the tip of the iceberg. There's just a lot that goes into this stuff. You need real professionals around you. Truly believe you are. I'm so glad to be joined with you today to talk about these important issues. I like you, I believe it's just a matter of time before Manhattan is just going nuts again. The greater New York area, there's something about that city that just keeps drawing people back there. I can't wait to come visit again and hopefully grab lunch with you or dinner in a restaurant, have some drinks. That'll be awesome. So again, Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Dan, thanks for having me. It's great to see you, and you're on. Next time you're in New York, we will definitely get together.
Let's do it. All right, folks. Well, that was a awesome segment. Certainly, I mean, look, I enjoy having on intelligent professionals that know what they're doing, like Johnathan Lerner. I mean, it just really helps the process. So often people go to the wrong resource. They don't understand what it is they need. Lawyers try to be something or everything to someone, and they just fall short of the expectations and end up in some sort of trouble or issue and run up costs. And I think when it comes to construction, whether it's on-site or off-site, that's one of the issues that plagues the process. You have too many lawyers trying to be experts in something that takes a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience, and it really is experience. I mean, 20 some years, and he's talking about specific issues and things he's seen. He knows what types of materials go into building the projects. He talked about it. We heard him talk about the torch down roof, things like that. That's what it takes to be able to properly advocate for a policyholder or a claimant that is getting damaged by a property nearby. So make sure you get the information you need. Make sure you check your resources, ask for testimonials, ask for the names and phone numbers of prior clients. Make sure you do your research. And if anything else that's come out of legislative session, it obligates you to find out more information and get more intimately involved in your own loss and damage. Unfortunately, I think a lot of policyholders really just throw their hands up and are like, oh, whatever, just let the contractor deal with it. They'll just deal with my insurance company. There's this fake promise that somehow this contractor has the same interest you do. Most contractors are only interested in getting paid. That's what drives their interest. And a lot of times in order to get paid, they have to value engineer or expedite a process or may not be acting in your best interest. Then at the end of the day, they realize there's an unpaid bill or a shortfall in the amount of money that was sent directly by the insurance company, and they're suing the insurance company on your behalf. You've assigned all your rights, all your obligations, everything over to them. And now they've stepped into your shoes and are acting on your behalf and now dragged you into years of litigation. I believe that some of this legislation goes to the extreme of trying to help and protect consumers. I truly believe that. Obviously, there's other issues with that legislation that go way beyond that, and I have issues with it. And we're going to more clearly highlight those things in upcoming memos, and we're going to continue talking about it because until the governor signs it into law and these things go into effect, which it does taper in, and there's some that immediately go into place and some that we believe will go into effect around July 1st. Again, that'll be all included in our blog posts and our memos, and also we'll continue talking about it here. But thank you everyone for joining us. We are still celebrating the countdown to 10 years here at GlobalPro. I particularly am very excited for that day. I'm looking forward to sharing with all of you and continuing to share with all of you all of the great things that have contributed to our success here at GlobalPro. So continue to tune in every week on the Recovery Report Live to provide you information, so we can provide you information you need so that you protect your interests as either a policyholder that's trying to get insurance or recovering from a loss. Check us out online. Go obviously onto our social media, like us, follow us. But most importantly, subscribe to our YouTube channel where we have a tremendous amount of content. We're building a massive library of information that you can use as a policyholder to protect your interests. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you next week here on the Recovery Report Live.